Bruchim Aboyim B'Shem Irgun Shirei Torah. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zev Smith Shalita on the topic of reheating, rewarming foods on Shabbos. What I'd like to have the great solicitor sponsoring a shir called Irgun Shirei Torah, 718-851-8651.
A while ago we spoke in the sugya of Bishul on Shabbos, and we said that Hilchas Bishul is mitztamek v'yafaloi. And I can say niba v'yoda ma niba. How true it is, every sugya in Hilchas Bishul is a sugya by itself, and it gets better and better. And today I want to focus on one part, one sugya, very much a hands-on. It's one yesod that will give us information to many shilas. And I'll give you some of the examples that we're going to focus on today. Someone, every Erev Shabbos, he would put kugel into the cholent. He has a cholent kugel. And one Erev Shabbos, he forgot to do it. And the shaila was on Shabbos itself. Can he take kugel from the oven and put it into the cholent? He's putting it from the oven into the cholent. Another question, someone had an upset stomach. He wanted to make toast on Shabbos. Take bread or challah and make toast. Put it onto the blech. We just heard the shaila about coffee. There are some coffees that have raw, or actually a coffee grind in it that was never cooked. Someone said his minig is he makes fresh coffee on Shabbos. That's our minig. It was strange to me. From coffee grind, he makes coffee on Shabbos, pours hot water onto coffee grind. Another question, today there are dehydrated vegetables, there's dehydrated meat. And the question is, can you warm that on Shabbos? And of course the old child of adding croutons, mandel into hot soup. So if you notice, the common denominator, tzad hashava, all these cases, the food is fully cooked. The kugel, the chayr is cooked. The croutons is cooked. The challah, the bread that you want to toast, is baked. And I want to be meisamei though, whatever we're going to talk about this morning, it's all fully cooked. In other words, with croutons and mandlin, dry, fully cooked or baked foods. So if that's the case, what's the shaila b'chlal? One of the basic klalim in Hilchas Shabbos is a Mishnah beferish, and Machab and Shin Yud Ches Tezvav says beferish. If something is fully cooked and it's dry, the klal is ein bishul acha bishul. So if so, what's the shaila? Why can't I take challah or bread and toast it, make it into toast? Coffee grind, even though it was never cooked, but it was baked, it was roasted. Kugel was either cooked or baked. And since it's fully prepared, why don't we say the basic klal of ein bishul acha bishul? Now you have to realize, as we once said, the halacha of ein bishul acha bishul is not just an halacha, it's a metzias. When something is fully cooked, there's no room for another bishul. There's no vacancy. Now, b'yesa bir, the Shulchan Aruch and Siv Dala quotes many Rishonim, a food that's only partially cooked, which is called Meichel ben Dersoy, then there's an Issa Bishul to cook it further on Shabbos. That I understand, because there's plenty of vacancy. It's only 50% cooked, so cooking 50% is also Bishul. But our sugya for today is a fully cooked food. L'mashal, I'll give you an mashal. You take a piece of cooked chicken out of the refrigerator, even out of the freezer. And it's, mamish, you can't eat it, it's so cold. Mi'ikad din, as long as it's dry and fully cooked, you could put it on top of a shalom pot and make it piping hot. Why? Ein bishul acha bishul. The hezbah, since the piece of chicken was cooked Erev Shabbos, there's no room for another bishul. Pashut, physically, there's no bishul if it's fully cooked. But Lamaisa, you're greatly improving this piece of chicken. The answer is precisely, improving is not bishul. Improving is ein bishul acha bishul. Bishul is making from raw to cooked. So the aside of ein bishul acha bishul, I give it a temporary motion, it's like redialing. Hit the redial button. You do the same thing over again, that's not an issa. Once it's cooked, ein bishul acha bishul. Oy bazoi, all of our cases, the challah was baked already, the kugel was baked already, and we'll soon see dehydrated was put in the oven, and coffee grind was roasted. All these cases, it was already prepared. But I'm sure you realize there's one fundamental difference between the regular Ein Bishul Achar Bishul and all of our cases. The croutons were baked, true. Now you're putting it into hot soup, you're cooking it. You're not redialing it. It's a different preparation. The coffee beans were roasted. Now you're putting it into hot water, you're cooking it. The kugel was baked in the oven. Putting it into the cholent, you're cooking it. Dehydrated vegetables was put in the oven. Now you're putting it into hot water. So now we have a very important question to clarify. Ein Bishul Achar Bishul is true because it's basically redialing the original preparation. Maybe there is bishul after baking. There is bishul after roasting. If that's true, Lamashal, you bake the croutons. Now you're putting it into hot soup. Now you're cooking it. If that's true, a new preparation is asa. So listen to this. It's worse than cooking a Meichel ben Drusai food. A Meichel ben Drusai food is at least cooked 50%. So the chiddush is 50% bishul is also asa. But this croutons was 100% baked, never cooked. So by putting it into hot soup, it might be 100% bishul. So it might be even worse than cooking a partially cooked food. Or maybe you'll say, what are you talking about? If something was fully baked, it is fully prepared. You're putting it into soup and you're cooking it, but there's no new issa called cooking or baking or roasting. There's one malacha, as the Mishnah says in Shabbos Ayin Gimel, afiyah. When something is fully prepared, then there's no longer a malacha. So maybe if it was never cooked, that's bishul. If the croutons were baked, now it is fully baked. What are you doing? You're putting it into soup, you're cooking it? That's not a malacha, that's called improving it. There's no issa by improving. So this, again, is a very fundamental question. Ein bishul achar bishul is there's no room for a second bishul. But maybe when you bake the croutons, there's no room for another baking. But cooking it would be 100% the issa bishul. Or maybe, no, the malacha is bishul, afiyah, and sli is one malacha. Once it's fully prepared, there's no more bishul, achar, afiyah. None of this is a problem. It's basically improvement. So listen to the Shenkei, the Nitzchis of our Torah. We're going to find croutons and toast and dehydration and crystallization and coffee grind, all in a sugya in Psachim. The background to this Gemara in Daf Mem Aleph in Psachim is there's an Issa Daraisa to eat a cooked carbon Pesach. You're not allowed to have Bashal and Mevushal, you have to have Tzli. Zok Gemara, let's say you first cooked the carbon Pesach and then you roasted it. Or he first roasted it and then he cooked it. So the Gemara says in both cases, if he eats it, he's oiv on the Issa Daraisa because he's eating cooked carbon Pesach. Frag the Gemara, I don't get this. If you first roasted it, so then it's roasted. You cooked it afterwards, big deal. It's roasted. Frag the Gemara, tzali v'achagach bishlai hatzli eshu. Why you oiv if you eat this roasted, then cooked carbon Pesach? It's a roasted carbon Pesach. You know what the Gemara is asking? Our ha'ara. Since lamaisa, you roasted it, it's fully roasted, the bishul that you do afterwards is not chal, it's not on the map. So it's a regular roasted carbon Pesach. Zog the Gemara, you're making a big mistake. Why? Because since now you cooked it, now what is his identity? Cooked. And that's why you're oiv. And the Gemara compares this to a second Hilchas Pesach that's negeya to us, Ada Yoim Hazeh. There's a mitzvah deraisa on the nights of Pesach to eat the matzah lechem oini. So Rabbi Yossi says, if you soak the matzah in water and you eat it, you yoitza the mitzvah of matzah. Now this, of course, is before the minig of gebrocks. We did our Gemara, you're allowed to make gebrocks, but if you put matzah in water, you yoitza the mitzvah of matzah. But Zok Rabbi Yossi, if you cook the matzah, then you're not yoytz to the mitzvah of matzah, because it's not lechem oini. Since you cooked it, it is like a bishul, and you have to have lechem. Bishul is not lechem. So the Gemara is telling us, even though you baked matzah 100%, when you cook it, it's ice baked, and now it's cooked. If that's the case, when you roasted Korban Pesach, you were good. But when you cooked it, you ruined it, and now it's cooked Korban Pesach, and therefore he's over. Rabbi say we see two rayas to our yesod. Cooked, baked, roasted Korban Pesach, when you cook it, becomes cooked. Baked matzah becomes cooked. Zok the Reheating, one of the Gedolei Rishonim. The Reheating is one of the Balei Atosis, and it's in Amid Kufla, Amid Dalet, Amid Beis, in the New Prince. He has mamish, our shaila, and our maskana. He says, true, ain't bishul acha bishul, but yesh bishul acha tzli. Why? And he quotes this Gemara in Pesachim. En achanami, if you cooked something, ain't bishul acha bishul. But when you come along and you make a tzli afterwards, so it is chal tzli. And he brings a raya from these two rayas, from Korban Pesach and matzah, and he concludes emphatically, v'im asa, if you cooked a roasted food, is chilul Shabbos, v'chosh shani loy miskila v'chatos. In other words, just like a cooked, roasted Korban Pesach is considered cooked, and cooked matzah is considered cooked. So when you cook a baked item, you did a ma'isa bishul, and therefore it's a chiyav chatas. And again, according to the Reheating, it's worse than cooking a partially cooked food, because the partially cooked food you're cooking 50%. Here you're cooking 100%, because the croutons were never cooked, and now you're cooking them fully. I know the Eglei Tal, the Skedarke B'Kodesh, and Tezvov Yutes, he says the Yesod of Bishul Achafiyah is Gitoi V'Yodoi Boyin Ke'echad. He says the Bishul takes away the Afiyah, and it's like a raw food. He calls it like raw, and therefore you're cooking it. And the Bems the Beis Meir and Sif Hey and Shin Yud Ches K'may B'Bishul Davachai. Because this is really what the Reheating says. When you cook a baked food, it's like you're cooking a raw food, because yesh bishul achar afiyah. However, this is not agreed by all the Rishonim. The Raviyah in Shabbos Kuf Tzadik Zayin, he writes, he heard from the Rabbeinu Eliezer Mimitz on the Reheating this chiddush, but he's not right. Why? Because you look at Masechta Brachos Lamed Ches Amud Beis, you'll see that the reason why you're not yoytzu with cooked matzah is because you have to have a tam lechem. Now what he means to say is, you look at the Gemara in Brachos, the Gemara in Brachos seems to say that really cooking doesn't change matzah. You know why you're not yoytzu the mitzvah of matzah leil Pesach with cooked matzah? It doesn't have a tam of matzah. Not that it's considered bishul, but it has to be lechem oini. And cooked matzah, you'll see what he's talking about. It's just not lechem. Therefore, regarding Hilchos Shabbos, cooking a baked food is not considered bishul. It's only a special halacha by matzah. The raya from Korban Pesach. Why, if you cook a roasted Korban Pesach, why you are over? So that the Beis Yosef Bayos and Shin Yud Chesed, that's pashut. The Torah insists on Pesach night eat roasted Korban Pesach. You have a cooked Korban Pesach. Not that it's considered bishul acha tzli, but lemais it's not tzli. It's roasted and then cooked. So it's exeris hakasib ubashul mavushul. Whenever you cook Korban Pesach, you're over. So both halachas Dr. Raviyah are not a raya to our case. In other words, once something is fully prepared, once it was baked, it's no longer any vacancies. Nothing could be chal. Now, of course, the Reheating was the Reheating. And you look in the Bach, the Taz, Maimon Mordechai, all explain the Reheating Shita. But basically, what the Reheating seems to hold is, if you re-cook a cooked food, you re-dial, like we say, that's nothing. That's just improving. But if you first cook and then you bake it, since baking is a different type of malacha deraisa, it's enough of a change that it's not an improvement. It's not just redialing. It's giving it a new effect, not just an improvement, it's a new effect. And therefore, yesh bishul achar afiyah. So this is the machlokes rishonim, if yesh bishul achar afiyah, and you'll see other rishonim, maracha, mul maracha. How do we paskin? Excellent question. In Shin Yud Ches Sifei, the Shulchan Aruch quotes both days. First the Reheating, and then he quotes the Rav Yah. And the fact that he concludes by quoting the Rav Yah, it seems that the Shulchan Aruch holds mi'ikad din ein bishul achar afiyah. Just like ein bishul achar bishul, ein bishul achar afiyah. The Ramah says an interesting lashon. Nohagu lizol lechatchila shlei litein pas afilu b'klisheni kozman sheyatzu ledisbay. In other words, he paskins like the Reheating, but a pretty mild lashon. Nohagu lizol lechatchila. He's not so convinced that it's osamam, not an issa d'rabbanan. It's a nohagu lizol lechatchila. Now, the reason why he was chayshish for the Reheating, because the Reheating calls it a chiyav chatas. But lemaisa for svardim, zok the kafachayim, she've cut in pei dalet, pei hey and pei vav, mi'ikad din for svardi ein bishul achar afiyah. But Tavay alav bracha, a Svardi that's machmir, yesh bishul achar afiyah. But for Ashkenazim, the minig, and it's a strong minig, a Ramazah minig, Bnei Yisrael yoytzim b'yad Ramah, like the Welt says, we are chayshish yesh bishul achar afiyah. But Dr. Rabbi Kivega on the Gillian, if someone put in challah into hot soup, it's not also b'di'evet. Because mi'ikad din, even the Ramah is noita that ain't bishul achar afiyah. Now that we have, I guess, a better understanding of the sugya, let us apply it lemais. First of all, most pashit, to add matzah or challah into hot soup for Ashkenazim is also. Why? That's mamish yesh bishul achar afiyah. Matzah and challah are baked, soup is going to cook it, yesh bishul achar afiyah. I'll say, but we learned a few weeks ago, you're allowed to add fully cooked dry lakshin into hot soup, even into the pot of soup when it's off the fire. Manishtana lakshin from matzah or challah. The answer is pashut. Lakshin is cooked. Ein bishul achar bishul. Ferish Mishnah. Matzah and challah are baked, and v'chaysh is yesh bishul achar afiyah. Question: someone has a piece of roast beef, and presumably roast beef was roasted, sli, and he forgot to warm it up before Shabbos. He wants to have it for the Suda. Can you put a piece of roast beef into hot soup, kli rishon that's off the fire? Now, this is pashtus the same thing. Roast beef was tzli, so yesh bishul achat tzli. The only thing is, zok the Torah Shabbos, and Sifkat Tezvav, maybe yesh bishul achar afiyah by challah, which is soft. So you put challah into soup, it gets cooked because it's soft. But a piece of meat, tzli, maybe because it's so tough, maybe it doesn't get cooked in a hot bowl of soup. And he points out that there are Muslims don't put challah into hot soup. But maybe a solid food that was roasted, maybe you're allowed to put into hot soup. That's what he paskins. However, the Reheating Beferish says, V'gam mitzli yesh lizoher. And that's the way most Paiskim paskin. The Tzais HaShulchan and Kuf Chav Dal Nun Bey says that even the Ramah chapped on adding challah to hot soup because that was shchiach. But huadin, roasted food, also you don't put into hot soup. It's tougher than challah. Okay, so it'll take a little longer. But since yesh bishul achat tzli, there's no difference soft challah or very hard roasted piece of meat. Because again, the svara is zil basatayim. This roast beef was fully roasted. No vacancy for tzli. But plenty of room for bishul, because yesh bishul achat tzli. So getting back to croutons or matzah or challah, you shouldn't add it into hot soup. Can I put it into my bowl of soup? So wait, my bowl of soup is a klisheni. I poured from the hot pot of soup into my bowl. But the Ramaisa, both the Mechaba and Ramah say that the minig is to be machmir even in klisheni. Because the Yereim says even a Kli Sheni you have to be machmir, because maybe challah or matzah is kali bishul, and is bishul even in a Kli Sheni. However, is mashma that let's say the soup is a Kli Shlishi, because you either used a serving bowl or you used a ladle, is mashma that would be mutter to add challah, matzah, or kutans. Why? Because this is already a Kli Shlishi, and even though by a real Kali Abishal, we spoke about this a while ago, even a Kli Shlishi is asa, but this is really ain't Bishal Achafiyah. We're machmer. We're machmer by a Kli Sheni, not by a Kli Shlishi. So if someone uses a serving bowl or even a ladle, it's a Kli Shlishi, you could add any baked items. The Chassam Sofer would often caution that this was a very common minhag in the olden days, that you had a kiddush, you had a coffee with a piece of cake, they would dip the cake into the hot coffee, and the Chassam Sofer would remind us that that's just as asa as putting challah into hot soup. What's the difference, challah into hot soup or a piece of cake into hot coffee? It's the same, yesh bishul achar afiyah. However, we would add that Bizman Hazeh, we're very from, our coffees are almost always at least a Kli Shlishi. Pour 1 cup, a second cup, a third, but it's probably a Kli Shlishi for sure. So then you could dip cake into the coffee, because Kli Shlishi we're not machmir. Someone asked, he was a frumah, he has a hot cup of coffee, and he's having cake, maybe there's crumbs in his mouth, so he's cooking the crumbs with the hot coffee. So the mouth is a Kli Shlishi, and the mouth is Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Goyin says, so don't worry. Plus, it's not a psik reisha, so that's not a problem. No. But let me ask you a question that will introduce us to a whole new type of question. Okay? Let's say the same case. Someone has a piece of roast meat, and he wants to warm it on Shabbos. But he's a lamdim. How do you warm it really gishmak? So the mitzias is, I'm going to tell you mitzias that I think is standard. Let's assume this stender is a blech. So there's a fire over here, and the blech covers the fire. The mitzias is, if you have a decent sized flame, and you put something right on the side of the blech, as close to the blech as possible, not on the blech, and you keep the food there long enough, that food will either roast or burn or both. Because if you have a decent sized flame, the flame goes up, but it can't go too further up. And it goes up and it goes out. So it's like goes in two directions. And try it. Put a piece of kishka on the side of the blech, as close as you can to the blech, not on the blech, on the side. The piece of kishka will get burnt. He wants to re-roast the roast beef. He's going to put it there, it's going to have a barbecue flavor, whatever it is, it's going to be roasted barbecue. It's cold, roasted beef. It was cold, he wants to re-warm it and give it a more roast to it. So this is a new shaila. Yesh tzliach atzli. Zok tetur, there's no heta. Ain't bishul acha bishul. But it's very hard to understand, zok tetur on this shita. Because it's not a gzeres hakos of ain't bishul acha bishul, period. It's a din, this redialing is mutam. Ain't bishul acha bishul. So it makes sense, ain't tzliach atzli. Same thing. A new effect is asa, but redialing the old effect, there's no room for tzli. So therefore, and that's the way we paskin, ein bishul acha bishul, ein tzli acha tzli. I'll give you another example. Pesach is coming. Some people save matzah from year to year. They want to use it the next year. So first of all, if you want to reuse matzah, first check if there's infestation. Sometimes you leave matzah in a basement. You could have plenty of visitors, which you don't want. So if it's clean from infestation, you could have it on Pesach. The problem is people say it tastes stale. So I never did this, but someone swore to me, if you put it into an oven, it will mamish be as fresh as it was made yesterday. The question is it mutter on Shabbos? You have to find the Hechatim, so it's not Chazara, but to take lo yitzah, to take matzah and put it into the oven and refreshen it, this mitzad halacha is perfectly mutter, because this is an example of ein afiyah achar afiyah. Ein bishul, ein tzli, ein achafiyah, after the original improvement. Next question is a little trickier. A person has baked schnitzel, for example. Baked, not cooked, baked. He wants to put it on the side of his blech to give it a roasted flavor. So he's a lamdin with a lamdish ha'ara now. Ein bishul acha bishul, ein tzli acha tzli, ein afi acha afiya. This is a kvi, a ayadin. This is yesh tzli acha afiya. Because it was baked and now it's roasted. So really the question is, what is the status of tzli versus afiya? Is it the same? Is it different? Bishul is cooked in water. Afiya is dry heat, baked in an oven. Tzli, presumably, like in Korban Pesach, was gebraten, like they say, roasted on the fire. The question is, maybe the fact that afiya is in a dry oven with the heat, tzli is using the fire, maybe it's two different preparations. Maybe yesh tzli acha afiya, and indeed the Pri Megadim in Mishpah Zahav, Sif Cotton Zion, seems to hold like that lamaisa. There are three different categories: bishul, tzli, and afiya. However, it's very possible that tzli and afiya are basically the same. It's not using the medium of liquid. What's the difference? Dry heat in an oven or heat of the fire? Because the truth is, an oven is also not magic, not dry heat. It's using the heat of fire. And that's why it seems that most poskim, El Yerabah and Sifkat and Yuzayin, the Machzah Shekel in Sifkat and Yuzayin, show that's the Magen Avram Shita, that tzli and afiya are basically one preparation. So, ein bishul acha bishul, and ein tzli acha afiya, or vice versa. So to take a roast beef and to bake it or faker it, l'mashal, I'll give you an example. He has roast beef that he roasted before Shabbos, and he forgot to warm it up. Can he put it into an oven or in a place where it's going to be baked and there's no chashash of chazara? The answer is ein afiya acha tzli, or vice versa. Next question, and I urge you to approach with caution. Someone he got a mishigas, he wants to have hot French fries on Shabbos. How do you have hot French fries on Shabbos? He has an idea. He'll take French fries from the refrigerator, put it on the side of the blech, and he'll have a very roasted French fries, a machayim. The problem is, this is not as pashut as we would like it to be. How do you prepare French fries? Now, if you're not a cook, you might not know this, but it's not cooked, and it's not baked, it's deep fried. They toivel the French fries in oil, and that's why if you put a wick into the French fry, it probably will burn for 7 days. That's how much oil it has. So it's plenty, it's cooked in oil. Oh, so now we have a new category, deep fried. Deep fried is cooked, but not in water. So the shaila is, do we say cooking is only bashal mavushal b'mayim? Oil is like not cooked, or maybe no. But what do you mean? Cooked is cooked. What's the difference? Cooked in water or cooked in oil? And well, the truth is, this negayat to hilchas brachas also. Deep fried, is it considered pasav abakistan? You have to wash and bench if you kaveh a suda, or is it a din bishul? And lamaisa, a perfect nafkamina would be chow mein noodles if they're deep fried. If it's deep fried and it's cooked, then guess what? You could take chow mein noodles and put it into hot soup. Why? Because ein bishul acha bishul. But maybe deep fried is not cooked, it's like baked, and yes, bishul acha afiya. So in svara, it certainly makes sense that bishul is lav dafka water. In fact, the Gemara says, the pasuk says, bashal mavushal mamayim is asa, you can't cook it in water, and the Gemara in Pesachim, the same sugya says, lav dafka mayim, any liquid. And that's why Rav Shlomo Zalman and Shmir Shabbos and Perek Aleph, Sif Ayin, Rabbi Yashiv is quoted, the Chut Hashani, and the Cheshveif, and all the Paiskim seem to say, deep fried in oil is considered cooked, bishul. Okay, the Pri Megadim, and that piece we mentioned earlier, has a suffix about it, but it seems that the Paiskim are more or less agree that deep fried is considered cooked. Now, that is a big kula in Hilchas Brachas. Because if someone eats a lot of cake, his kaveh yasuda, he has to wash and bench, because pas of abakistan could be pas. But if someone's kaveh yasuda on knedlach or on deep fried donuts, since we're saying at the din of bishul, then you never wash and bench on a cooked food. It has to be a baked food. So in Hilchas Brachas, deep fried is a big kula that it's never Kaviyas Suda. But regarding Hilchas Shabbos, our Shaila, this particular question of putting French fries on the side of the blech to roast it would be a problem. Because the French fries were deep fried, they are cooked. To roast it would be yesh sli, achar, bishul. So a deep fried item should be considered a cooked item. Okay. Now, a trickier question is, let's say you want to put latkes, potato latkes, on the side of the blech. Same question. So latkes are nishtinish teher. It's not baked. It's not deep fried. It's not cooked in water. It's fried in oil. So the shayla, that's called tigun in Allah. And again, the question is, what is tigun? There's negeya if you fried tarfis, how do you kasha the pot? It's negeya to hilchas brachas. So this is not as pashut as we would like it to be. The Pri Megadim in same shtickle says that tigun is considered like tzli, like fried, not bishul. The Rav Shulchan Aruch, the Mishnah Berurah regarding hilchas brachas say, tigun, since you have oil, it's considered bishul. It's no different than deep fried. Very nice. So what's halacha l'maisa? You have Gedalia Paiskim, him saying bishul and saying tzli. So we would say it's a suffix if yesh bishul achafiyah. So big deal. I mean, the whole thing is a big chumrah. So you can be mekel. But Reis Apel, the Mincha Shabbos in Pei, Sif Chav, and the K'tes HaShulchan Kuf Chav Dalad Yuzayin, speaking about about fried latkes. They called it kiglach, but it was latkes. They both say you have to be chayshish l'chumra on both ends. Don't re-cook it because maybe it's bishul, and don't rebake it because maybe it's considered a tzli or a fiyah. Now, why you chayshish chumra on both ends? The teretz is because at the end of the day, like the Yereim, this is chayiv chatas, skila. So even though we're not so convinced the Yereim is right, but we treat it like a suffix deraisa. And therefore a baked item is baked. Deep fried is cooked. Fried item is a suffix bishul, suffix pas, and we shouldn't do any other preparation. The same mahalach basically regarding tzli kedem. Now tzli kedem is a Pesach sugya. Tzli kedem is you put meat or chicken with vegetables into a pan, into the oven, and there is no liquid at all. But it gets cooked from its own natural moisture. That's why Rashi teaches in Psach and Daf Mem Aleph. So we call it roast, but it's tzli kedem. There's no moisture. The Pri Megadim and Sif Kot and Zayin says that's considered tzli. There's no moisture. There's no liquid added. The Aruch HaShulchan and Sif Nun Zayin, and that's where the Chazon Ish, the Lamed Zayin, the end of Yudal seems to say, since it's cooking in its own moisture, it's considered bishul. So this is another one of those sveikis, the status of tzli kedem. Agav, for those that don't like, Seder night, the old minig always was to have soup chicken, because you're not allowed to have roast on the Seder night. People say, is there any eitzah to have prepared chicken that has more tam to it? So the emphasis is, if you put chicken into a pan with gravy or sauce and put in the oven, that's not considered tzli. As long as there's a significant amount of liquid, that's bishul. The fact you put it into an oven, into a pan, into a broiler, does not make it automatically into tzli. If there's enough moisture, enough liquid, that would be considered a bishul, and it would not violate the minig. An interesting question. Someone had, we spoke about this, but we're going to get back to this part, dehydrated vegetables in instant soup. So you can have other scenarios, vegetables that are dehydrated. Now, what is the metzias? It's not baked, it's not cooked, it's not fried, it's dehydrated using a intense heat, and not intense in temperature, but an intense gush of heat. So what is the status of dehydration in halacha? So this is an issue, because the metzias, and I spoke to those that know the metzias, you could dehydrate, especially little cubes of vegetables, in a very low temperature. So believe it or not, it's not tzli, it's not afiyah, it's not bishul. It's none of the above. It is not halachically cooked. It's not prepared. The temperature was not hot enough to bring it to a bishul level or tzli level. So that's why to put these instant soups with these little cubes of dehydrated vegetables could be not a question of ein bishul acha bishul or yesh bishul acha afiyah. It's bishul. It's the real McCoy din of bishul. So not only Ashkenazim shouldn't do that, even a Sfardi that holds yesh ein bishul acha afiyah, but this was never cooked. There's a type of meat, I'm not going to say the name, I don't think it's a Lashon Nekiya name, but it's a type of meat in the market that is dehydrated, never cooked, never roasted, dehydrated meat. That type of meat also should not be added to a hot soup or cholent, because even though it's fully edible, but it was never cooked or baked or roasted, it was dehydrated. Smoked foods, I should mention this, L'mashal, someone wants to have hot lox. So he wants to put the lox into hot water. What's the problem? The big problem, because smoked, if it's done right, lox specifically, is not cooked or roasted. Lox that's smoked is raw fish that was rendered edible. I heard this from an old European Rav. Ich kann nicht essen die Lachs. Das is raw fish. I wonder what we'd say today. People eating raw fish mamish. But this smoked fish is a preparation that makes it edible. But at the end of the day, lox is raw fish. In Bishul Akum, we are a day of Kuf Yud Gimel, Sif Yud Gimel. We paskin that a guy that smokes the fish is no issa of Bishul Akum. It's not considered Bishul. So raw lox that's raw, which is edible because if it's smoked, to put in hot water would be real Bishul. Because it's not a Bishul Achav Afi or Tzli. It's Bishul, period. There was never a Bishul. And even a Sfardi should be aware of that because this is a non-Bishul food that was rendered edible by smoking. Lakshin, we said, you're allowed to put into hot soup, even a kli rishon off the fire, ain't bishul acha bishul. For those that have the traditional minig on Pesach to make hemishal lakshin by frying eggs, there's no hekish lakshin. Putting the Pesach lakshin into hot soup is a problem, because that was fried, and we said fried, we should be machmir that yesh bishul achar, if you call it tzli. So the fact that lakshin are in the is mutter, but Pesach lakshin that's fried could be yesh bishul achat tzli. Of course, on Yom Tov it's mutter. We're talking about on Shabbos. To add cold rice or cold farfel or cold arbis into a hot kli rishon off the fire are all mutter because ain't bishul achat bishul. Arbis, rice, and farfel were all cooked. If you added spices after the arbis were cooked, so then you get into the shayla, maybe by ground spices, there's a problem of bishul, which is a different shear. But basically, cooked rice, farfel, and arbis are good examples of ein bishul, acha bishul. Someone asked, he likes to put cold cuts, sliced meat, into hot cholent. In fact, someone asked, I don't know if this is his minig or this is becoming a more, he likes to put the package of corned beef, the whole package, with the package into the cholent. Maybe he says, I don't know what the chal, he said it comes out much better. I don't know. I stopped asking why people do things already. But anyhow, whatever the case is, all these examples are l'chayr mutter, because the corned beef and all these things, these meats were cooked. Now, in corned beef, you also have another preparation, you cure it, but l'mais, at the end of the day, sliced meat was cooked, and this is ein bishul, acha bishul. Some of the salami is steamed as well, but steamed basically with heat, with water that is another bishul process. So basically, as long as the meat was fully cooked, it's not like smoked lox, it would be ein bishul, acha bishul. And there's no cooking on the plastic, obviously, so if you do that, that wouldn't be a problem. Let me ask you a beautiful aura. Someone, when I was having a simcha, he wanted to serve blintzes or barekis with a hot sauce, kenog, like by a simcha. So he had a gewaltige Einfall. The blintzes are still hot. So what's wrong with putting sauce onto blintzes? But he's an oversight. Because the blintzes, if the blintzes were baked, now yesh bishul achar afiyah. So if you're pouring from a kli rishon, the sauce in a kli rishon, so it's iri kli rishon, yesh bishul achar afiyah. But he said the blintzes are steaming. How could they be bishul? So the answer is zil basatayma. I know the blintzes are fully baked and they're still hot, but you're giving a new process called bishul. So what does it help that the blintzes are hot? That doesn't help one for the other. If you want to rewarm the same food, then hot is an maila. But here, it's a new process. This would be an iri klarishan, yesh bishul, achar afiyah. Okay, if you put the sauce into a klisheni, Iri Klishein is a different story, or if it's no longer Yad Soledes. But this is, the Mishnah Berurah says, Beferish, and Sifkat Mem Aleph, Yesh Bishul Achafiyah, Afilu Adayin Reiseyach, Machmas Hatzliyah. Putting kneidlach, cold kneidlach, dry kneidlach into hot soup is perfectly mutter. And even the Pesach, for those that use Pesach, kneidlach for matzah meal, which was baked, but since after the baking you cooked it, so that would be ein bishul acha bishul. Interesting question. Someone, this goes back years ago, and you have to realize after the Mechama, people had new scenarios there was no precedent. Someone had a gewaltige Einfall. He discovered, maybe he dealt with tea bags, that all tea bags, the tea leaves are put in the oven before they're sold. Either to sterilize it, maybe to roast it, or maybe a little of both. But basically, the tea bags were put in an oven. So he asked Rav Moshe and Chelik Beisim and Pehei Oy Bazoi, I could put a raw tea bag into hot water because ain't bishul acha bishul. Because the tea bag I saw was put into the oven. So Moshe says, wait a second. In the best scenario, the tea bag in the oven would be afiyah, not bishul. And we paskin yesh bishul acha afiyah. But Dr. Moshe, more than that. Lamaisa, even for Svardi, that you ain't bishul acha afiyah, tea bag is not mutter. Because in order to be considered afiyah, it has to be baked. When you put a tea bag, the tea, into an oven, it's not baking it. Varaya, it's not an ois gespielte tea bag, it's not a used tea bag. It just sterilizes it, but it doesn't change the status or the mitzias of a tea leaf. And Rav Moshe says a big yisoid, bishul is when you make a shinui behadava, when you change it from raw to cooked. The tea bag is not becoming a cooked tea bag. And Rav Moshe brings a Mordik Raya. In Shabbos Daf Mem, there's a shita, we don't pass this way, but there's a shita that if you cook oil, you bring it up to a boiling temperature, it's not bishul. Why not? It's boiling it. Because this shita holds shemen does not become a vushel. Lamaisi, you're cooking it. The terror is, if you don't change it from raw to cooked, it's not bishul. So Rav Moshe, the tea bag also, you see, it's not considered, doesn't make it a used tea bag. It's making it ready to be able to cook it. But the tea bag, even though it was in the oven, is not afiyah, is not bishul, and therefore don't add a tea bag. He says, because it's regular bishul even for the Svardim as well. Now, this yisoid, I think, is very applicable to the heintige dehydration. Because the dehydration process is put into an oven, or they use heat, I don't think they put an oven, they use heat, whatever it is. But in either case, it doesn't change it, doesn't make it cooked. So therefore, something that's in a heat does not necessarily make it afiyah unless it's halachically afiyah. Listen to a really gishmak geshayla. Someone told me his minig is you make freshly brewed coffee on Shabbos. I was surprised. No, he didn't. We don't use a percolator or a Keurig. They take coffee grind, put it in water, put hot water into it, and that's what's called Turkish coffee, and it's very strong, and that's their covered Shabbos. Now, it was a plea to me, what's going on here? He says, because the coffee ground, either way, word is correct, is roasted. All coffee beans are roasted before it's sold, and therefore, l'chayra ein bishul achar afiyah. And the truth is, like the Ramah, our minig, of course, this is awesome. But the question is, for a Svardi, he might be right. Ein bishul achar afiyah. Okay, Tavei la bracha not to do that, we saw the Kaf HaChaim says. But the emes is, Rabbi Yakov says this Lamaisa, that for Svardis allowed to take roasted coffee grind and put hot water onto it, or put it into hot water, because ein bishul achar afiyah. However, many poskim strongly take exception to that the roasting process does not make it edible. You roast it to get out the flavor of the bean, so then the cooking does its job. But it's not yet roasted fully. And you know what it's like? It's like Rav Moshe's tea bag. Not exactly, because the tea bag was not, was not as powerful as the roasting, but the roasting is not the final product. The Or Letzion was also a Svardi in Perek Lamed Siv Dalet. He says, the Dafka Nefa Afiyah Gemura. But this coffee grind is still not edible. It's like Michael Ben Dursoi, he calls it, but it's not yet fully cooked. not yet fully roasted. And Hitaka says definitely not to do it even, not even a klisheni not, because this might be kalei abishal. So even for Sfardi, Zakta Arletzion, you can't make coffee from coffee grind on Shabbos. Now, Yabio Aima in Chelik Tes, Peiches Yud Aleph, Kuvov Gimel, Kuv Ches, Kuv Sabachei, strongly defends his position. He says the Arletzion is not right. He quotes an earlier source that the coffee grind is Necheles, B'tei Avain, V'tama, is very good, and it's a Oichel, Nena Ma'oid. So I don't know if it's a machlokes in Metzias. I've never ate plain coffee grind, but I could say for an Ashkenazi, there's nothing to talk about. You can't make coffee on Shabbos from coffee grind. For a Sfardi, there are machlokes gedolei aposkim. The B'yaim also recognize there are some earlier poskim that were machmir, some were mekel. But one thing I will say, if indeed we'll accept, which certainly for Ashkenaz we have to accept, is that coffee grind is roasted, but it's not considered sli in halacha, then even in a klisheni you can't prepare coffee because it's kali abishal, and therefore it shouldn't be made even in a klisheni. As far as putting kugel from the oven, the mashal, into the cholent pot, because you want to have the cholent kugel for the next day, so the chayra, it's not a problem of chazara on Shabbos, because the kugel was in the oven al gabi eish, it's going into the cholent, which is also gabi eish. Eish to eish is not a problem. But here's the issue. If your kugel was baked, and now you're putting it into the cholent, it's the eish bishol, achar, afir. Now, if you tell me I use so much oil, my kugel is cooked, okay, so then if you call this cooked, ein bishol, achar, bishol. But a typical kugel is baked, putting it from the oven, from the baking into the cholent would be yesh bishul achar afiyah. Someone asked an interesting shaila. Today people are very busy with carved meat. They have cut corned beef. He got a very, very hot piece of corned beef, by kiddush I think it was, or suda, whatever it was. He put it onto challah, and he wanted to know maybe he's cooking the challah, because the meat was very hot, and the touch of the challah, he's cooking the challah. So this is very little of a shaila, if any, because don't forget that the piece of meat is, at most, l'chayr is a klisheni. Oh, you say dava gush? Okay. But lamaisa, and also we're machma klisheni, so let's assume that it's like kli rishon. Fine. But where's the bishul? The challah was baked. So yesh bishul achar afiyah. Where's the bishul? The piece of meat was a dava shen is bashul, that's true. But it's a piece, it's now with solid. There's no gravy, there's no liquid. So the piece of meat, even though it was cooked, but it's not cooking the challah. There's no moisture. So, there's no problem with that, even if you say that it's a kli rishon davagush. Okay. I just mentioned this, someone wants to have Hamish at Dunkin' Donuts on Shabbos. He's all concerned. There's a grad in Eitzah. If you take donuts that were deep fried, then you could dunk it, believe it or not, into the hot coffee, even a kli rishon coffee. Why? Because if we assume that the donuts are deep fried, are cooked, ein bishul acha bishul. So that sounds very strange, but it's true. Donuts is ein bishul acha bishul. But if you have filling or sprinkles, or you have to know the sugar on top of it, but donuts would be a bishul, ein bishul acha bishul. Our original question of adding croutons or mandel or matzah to soup, so we already saw basically that we don't add matzah, challah, or croutons to a hot soup, but if you have a kli shlishi or a ladle, the velt is make like the Mishnah Berurah does say. Rabbi Yashiv in his Agodah Shel Pesach quotes Rabbi Yitzchak Chonan every year would say by the Shabbos Agodah Drasha, because again in his city they ate gebraks, not to put matzah even into a kli shlishi. I guess he was chayish that if you invite it's kali abishal, even kli shlishi is us. Okay. But the Mishnah Berurah does say in Sifkat and Memhei, if you use the ladle, his lashon is a little very mild endorsement. L'chal apachis, you should use a ladle, and then you could put in croutons or matzah. So we could say the velt is saimach on a kli shlishi to put a matzah or challah. Rabbi Yitzchak Chonan was chayish even a kli shlishi. But one thing I want to mention, not all added things that we add are equal. La'es ata, things are constantly changing because people are very concerned about fats and oils. But la'es ata, the popular osem mini mandels, those little yellow croutons, are deep fried. If you have those that are deep fried, then you can put it even into hot soup off the fire, because that would be ein bishul acha bishul. Now again, things are changing. I've already seen chow mein noodle, which was the typical example of deep fried. It says baked, not fried, because people are very worried about the effects of oil and fats. Rav Vozna in Chelik Yud Samach Gimel and Oznidbro in Yud Aleph Chavtes come out the same thing. He says, don't add anything to hot soup because things are constantly changing. You think it is cooked, deep fried, maybe it's baked. Okay, that's like a stickle of a unusual gezerah to make, but if you want to add something to a hot soup, make sure it's taka still deep fried. They could start changing it, they could start making baked, but if it's deep fried, ein bishul acha bishul. Someone said he puts croutons into hot soup and he eats it very quickly. So that doesn't seem to make sense. Because Lamaisa, if yesh bishul achafiyah, who said it takes an hour to take effect? Maybe a tough piece of roast beef might take a little longer. But I saw Taki McDonough, Eliyahu, Beis, Pehei. He says it could be yesh bishul achafiyah is instantaneously. Next question. Listen to a beautiful ha'ara. Someone has a lakshin kugel. Let's say a salt and pepper lakshin kugel. He wants to add it to hot soup. What's the shayla? So listen to a beautiful ha'ara. Lakshin originally was cooked. Then you baked the lakshin kugel. Now the question is, so it had two gilgulim. Ein bishul acha bishul, yesh bishul acha afiyah. This is bishul afiyah. Now what? Another example, believe it or not, is farfel. Farfel, it says on the bag, toasted, afiyah. You cooked it. So it has two gilgulim. How do you look at something that had two preparations? So what's really the beauty of the sugya, this is mamish our Gemara. The Gemara says in Korban Pesach, bishlai v'achakach tzloi, you first cooked it and then you roasted it, he's chayiv. Freg de Pimagodim, of course, very bekitz in Eish Lavram Sivkat and Yud Zayin. Why is it asa? If you roasted it, it should be only roasted. Zog de Pimagodim, evidently we see that the first preparation is still here. Zog de Pimagodim, Oibazoi and Hilchos Shabbos, the same thing. If you had bishul and then you had afiyah, you're allowed to make another bishul. You just roasted it, but the first bishul is still in existence, like we see from Korban Pesach. So that Gemara is giving us a lot of mileage, that you're allowed to look at both kulas because both are still here. The Bialacha in our Sif Hey has a problem with this, and his problem basically is that regarding Korban Pesach, it's a Gzeres HaKosiv, that Lamaisa, any bishul is also. But maybe in Hilchos Shabbos, if now it was baked, it's only baked and not lakula considered cooked. But, as we said, the Prima Godim and is Beferish Mekel, as is Shvisa Shabbos, Yivkot and Tzadik, says Shulchan Kuf Chav Dalet Nun Aleph, and therefore we could say that if you have something like this that was first cooked, then baked, we could assume it has both milas, and you're allowed to put that baked kugel into hot soup, ein bishul, acha bishul, even though there was an afiyah in between. Rather, the farful shaila is mutter l'chol hadayis. Because the Bialach himself spells out, if you had afiyah and then bishul, then I agree you're allowed to make another bishul. Because you go basa the last preparation. So farful is afiyah and bishul, and therefore ein bishul, acha bishul. So that would be a perfect nafkamina of this case. Another fascinating shaila. Someone, we once spoke about this, making coffee from coffee powder from instant coffee. So basically, there should be nothing wrong mi'ikadadin pouring hot water directly onto instant coffee. Why are we machman not to do that? Because maybe since the coffee is a soluble, it turns into a liquid, it's considered a liquid, and yesh bishul acha bishul davalach. But some say, and Rabbi Yashva is quoted as saying this, a different reason not to pour hot water onto instant coffee on Shabbos, but listen to an Einfal. Coffee beans are first roasted, and then they're cooked, and you have this big amount of coffee, liquid coffee. Then you remove most of the water by evaporation. But it's inevitable that there is a slurry, viscous, thick liquid syrup that remains after this whole procedure. That's when there's another process called crystallization, that basically with heat and pressure, they get rid of any remaining liquid and it turns into powder. Now, freeze-dried is a different mahalach, but basically, if you think about it, the coffee powder we have, innocent coffee, has 3 gilgulim. First, it's roasted, the beans are roasted, then it's cooked, and to get out the liquid, it is dried or baked, and Zok Rabbi Yashiv, that maybe the coffee should be treated like a afiyah. And now, yesh bishul achar afiyah. Now, Lamaisa, this is not so intimidating, because even if that's so, if we go with the Prima Gadim, so you look at what it was, so there's no problem. But more so, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman is quoted as saying that the drying process is not a nafiyah or tzli, it's to get rid of the liquid, but doesn't have a shem tzli, it doesn't have a taste of tzli, it just gets rid of the liquid. So Lamaisa, that's why we could say that this problem is not the real problem, why we don't pour hot water onto instant coffee. The real problem is because it becomes a liquid and it's considered a davalach. A fully cooked piece of cold chicken. Listen to a simple shayla. Cooked, dry, and has alamailas. So to put it onto the blech is a problem because you're not allowed to make chazar. But it's a minig b'chol tfutz Yisrael. You put it on top of the challah pot. It gets piping hot, and yoichel an oven v'yizbou. Question: how are you allowed to do that? Bishleim to take that piece of chicken and put it into a hot pot of soup that's not on the fire is ein bishul acha bishul. But if you're putting it on top of a challah pot, it's not bishul. It's sli, it's afiyah, but it's not bishul. There's no liquid that's affecting the warmth of that chicken. Freg the base mayor and Sif Tezva, Bialacha quotes him. How could you put food on top of a pot? Ain't bishul acha bishul, so cook it. Put it into hot soup. But putting it on top of the challah pot is not bishul. So this probably could be a half a share by itself. But the simple pshat zok the Chazinish in Lamed Zayin, the end of Sifkot and Yudalid, that you're not roasting it or baking it. You taste the chicken, it's the same boiled chicken. What is it? Rewarming. Rewarming is not awesome. In other words, the Beis Meir assumed if it's not cooking in water, by default, it becomes sli or afiyah. So the Chazanish, no, if you don't taste the sli or afiyah, it is not sli or afiyah, it's a nudin, a fourth category. Now, I should mention what we discussed earlier, if you take that boiled chicken and put it on the side of the blech, because you want to roast it, but that's roasting. And that's probably why the Takim Mr. Brewer himself, in Sif Cotton Mem Aleph, writes the Farish, you shouldn't put cooked food into the oven on Shabbos, because there's a problem of tzli achar bishul. That's, I understand. If your kavana is to roast it after bishul, it's awesome. But our innocent person that puts a piece of kugel, a cooked chicken on top of the blech, it's nishtahi, nishtaher, it's just rewarming. Someone that needs toast on Shabbos. So assuming it's a Meichel Bri and there's no Issa Refuah, can you make toast from challah or bread on Shabbos? So the Yemen says, as far as we're concerned, this is a typical ein, afiyah, achafiyah. The only thing is, some say maybe there's a problem of makah b'patish, others say maybe there's a question of makshe gufrach, which is a different sugi entirely. If you want to see the Shvisa Shabbos, if you cut in Tzaddik, or the Ma'ora Shabbos, I saw a nice Shmira Shabbos, Aleph, Ha'ora, Reish, Yud, Gimel, discuss these other issues, but just in itself, taking challah and baking it into a toast would be a simple ein afiyah achar afiyah. Rabbi Shlomo Zalman initially held, this is quoted in the Ma'ora Shabbos, that you're allowed to take the challah and put it even on top of the blech, on the blech itself. Merzikim avashel. Shlomo Zalman felt that no one does that, even during the week. No one bakes challah and putting it on top of the blech. That was his shita, but later he retracted. It's also quoted in the Ma'ora Shabbos. He said, because Lamaisa, putting it on the fire is an issa, doesn't make a difference how you're doing it, and that's what he considered to be awesome. Taking challah from the oven, from the freezer, And rewarming it, you have to make sure there are no ice particles, and that should then because that would be bishul mamish. The ice particles were never cooked, and that would be bishul. Achrein, Chav, let me tell you a cholent shayla. Okay, someone had a cholent that needed a Yeshua. It was dried out. It was almost what you call a burnt offering. Problems. So if he does everything right, he takes the pot cover off and all the steam dissipates, and he takes the cholent pot and brings it to a urn. So there's no problem of basa b'cholav. There's no problem of he's not mixing the cholent pot. He's doing everything right. But listen to a pashata ara l'chayra, because this cholent, since it dried so considerably, what is it now? Tzli. Adding water, l'chayra should be yesh bishul achat tzli. However, in the worst scenario, we have the Pri Megadim to be Seimechan. Even if you'll say that, it's still Ein, since it was originally Bishul, so it's Bishul, Tzli, and Ein Bishul, Achat Tzli, Bishul. Besides that, even like the Bialach, it's probably Mutta, because Rabbi Zalman says this is a Hemshech of the original Bishul, it's not a new Bishul. Also, in the worst scenario, it's a Tzli Keda, which is not terrible, like some Shitas. What someone told me, what he does is, he likes to have a roasted cholent. So Shabbos morning, if there's too much water, he pours out all the water. I don't know about Bayra, but he pours out all the liquid, and he puts it back on the fire. That taka is a problem, because he wants to make it into tzli. But one thing I will say, Friday night, someone has cholent, so someone once had this cheshbon. He took cholent, took some of the liquid. Maybe by Shabbos day, by the time Shabbos day comes along, it's going to end up being tzli because no liquid left. So that, Rav Shlomo Zalman and Cheshleima Aleph Yud said that's not a problem. When you put it back, if it was bishul, there's no problem. What happens later is good. A good tug to you all.
Shem Egan Shir, I'd like to bring a shikaya to Rav Smith for today's shir. Whoever would like to sponsor a shir, call Egan Shir, 718-851-8651. Rav Smith will give a sikkim of today's shir in about 5 minutes. Gott sei Dank, Baruch Hu, Lazach ist es Yisrael, Fiege Hebel und Teure Mitzvah, Shenem Adonai Chofetz, der Mann Tzidka, Yagdol Teure B'yadeh.
Yeah, go to the bank. I'm going that way. I'll bring it back. Yeah, that's the thing.
I don't know why it has to be like the public was seeing anything about this. So, want to have a flag. So, he said that I can go on the flag. So, I don't know if you got built out check. So, I went to we have an issue that said, and we did. I don't think I think they think much of the company. I don't know how technically this thing is. You know, so don't worry about it. I thought it was an issue with this subject. Why he was in the email out there? Why did you see tweeting about it? What else? The other side of the yeah, right. Who got rabies?
Different there, yeah. Why?
That's more of a runny substance.
It's like a liquid. Someone asked about garlic dip. What's garlic dip? Put it into soup? Whole garlic? That's someone told me.
Garlic dip is a dip, like mayonnaise with ham garlic.
Okay.
Roast beef is really sweet-cut.
Right. I said if it's roasted. I kept on saying, you're right. I said if it's roasted. Correct.
Is real sweet. Only sweet that we have.
Yeah. All these turn on
Yeah, you
the...
still have it.
Everybody said the food's getting cold. We have to reheat it, and we're going to have the sikkim of today's shish. Just 5 minutes. Zum dritten Mal.
Okay, just to review what we learned today, Bez Hashem, the basic klal, ein bishul acha bishul, is a Mishnah. Lesman the Polag, it's a Metzias, like we explained. There's no room for a second bishul. Once it was cooked, it's fully cooked. If somebody only Meichel ben Drusai, we can understand why many Rishonim hold it's an Issa cooking it, because there's room for bishul. Rewarming is ein bishul acha bishul, and that's an improvement, maybe a very significant improvement, but it's still not bishul, and that's the basic Yisod of ein bishul acha bishul. Today's sugya is a new form of preparation, not a second bishul, but bishul achar afiyah. And according to many Rishonim, there's a chalois shem bishul after afiyah. Afiyah was one preparation, and bishul is 100% bishul on this baked food. And however, the Ravio and many Rishonim say no. Once it is fully prepared, it's no longer raw. Once it's fully prepared, afiyah and bishul are one and the same. So bishul achar afiyah is another improvement which is not asa. So for some, and that's the meaning of Svardim, ein bishul achar afiyah miyakid adin, taval bracha, but it's mutter miyakid adin. And for Ashkenazim, l'chayshish for the Yereim, they calls it a chi of chatos. To put lakshin into hot soup is no problem, ein bishul achar bishul. To put baked challah, matzah, croutons into soup is totally in this machlekes, and Ashkenazim are machmir. Cake into hot coffee, if it's a kli sheni, is the same problem. If the coffee is a kli shlishi, just like soup is mutter in a kli shlishi, to add things so too, dipping cake into a kli shlishi of coffee. Ein tzli achat tzli, and ein afiyah afiyah is l'chol hadayis, because it's not exercikas of ein bishul achat bishul, it's ein redialing, the same effect is mutter l'chol hadayis. The chiddush that we said is there's at the ein afiyah achat tzli, or vice versa, because even though tzli and afiyah are slightly different, but in halach it's one and the same, so they're basically two categories. Bishul b'mayim is one, afiyah and tzli without mayim, without liquid I should say, and that is ein afiyah achat tzli or ein tzli achar afiyah. Deep fried, we assume, is like bishul and hilchas Shabbos and hilchas brachos. Fried and tzli keder is a machlekes gedoli apoiskim, and l'chayre we should be chayshish for both. Dehydrated vegetable or meats, if they're not brought up to a temperature that make them afiyah, would be shayla bishul, not ein bishul acha bishul or yesh bishul acha bishul. This is a real bishul because the dehydration is not yet a full bishul process. Smoked fish, lamashal wax, was never cooked, and therefore it's a real problem of bishul. Pesach, lakshin are fried, regular lakshin are cooked, but Pesach lakshin are fried, and the same shayla are fried if yesh bishul acha after it being fried. Cold rice, farfel and arbis, there's no problem because ain't bishul acha bishul. Cold cuts into cholent, we said putting the whole package, someone was ma'ira, that if the package, the closed package of cold cuts has moisture in it, or spice that were never cooked, that should be a problem. You have to first puncture the package, let out all the liquid and any additives that were not yet cooked, and then you could put the package with the cold cuts into the hot cholent. Hot sauce onto hot blintzes is still a problem of bishul achar afiyah, even though the blintzes are still hot, because it's the iri klirishin is cooking the baked blintzes. Teabag is like uncooked, it's like dehydration. Turkish coffee, the minig of Ashkenazim, and I think many Sfardim also, to consider it not yet tzli, and therefore it's a problem of bishul, not just ein bishul achat tzli, but it's never tzli. Kugel into cholent should not be done if the kugel was baked, because that's bishul achar afiyah. Hot meat onto a challah is fine. Deep fried donuts into coffee is ein bishul achar bishul. Hot soup and adding croutons, matzah or challah is only in a kli shlishi, and ladle is good for a kli shlishi. Deep fried croutons, if you know they are deep fried, like the mini mandlin, is fine. Bishul and afiyah, and now bishul. So we said that the most paiskim are mekel, even though now you have a afiyah now, but since it was bishul earlier, it has the maila of both. Farfel all agree is mutter because it was baked, cooked, and now recooking is fine l'chol hadayis. Coffee powder is not considered tzli in this respect, but we could consider it like it was bishul, just we don't put it from a kli rishon onto it because of the problem of being a davalach. Rewarming cooked food on top of a cholent pot is mutter, it's not tzli, it's not afiyah, it is rewarming. If you put it on the side of the blech to roast it, of course that would be a problem. Toasting chal is not a problem, mitzvah toast, because ain't afiyah. The other issues, if it's a problem of makba patish or maksha gufrach, but it's not a problem of afiyah achafiyah. Adding hot water to a cholent is muta. If you do it right, there's no issa of bishul achatzli. If you want to roast it and empty out the liquid, of course that's a problem. But basically, to put back a cholent pot, even though later on it might turn into a tzli situation, is not an issue. Okay.
The chicken that boils in on a rotary, that's tikade, or what is that?
No,
That's late.
That's it.